Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin playlist and the War in Ukraine playlist. Today, I'd like to talk about dead men walking and talking. Or the question is, why does Zelensky speak about the victory when in fact he is facing defeat? Now, this is, of course, the question that the whole world is now discussing, the victory plan that Zelensky brought in to Washington, and there are all kinds of interpretations. And I'd like to add a few more important details and considerations in discussing this issue. Now, the first question, of course, why is it a dead man? Why is it that I call him finished, that he has no prospects? The answer, of course, is in the unfolding events on the front lines. And every day there are all kinds of reports about daily movements of troops and which villages were taken. And the question, of course, is pretty simply answered. The Russian army is advancing. This is not something that was expected. This is something that just a few months ago, the US were saying Ukraine is winning, Ukraine is advancing. Even a few weeks ago, when they moved into Kursk province, the whole top-ranking officials at the conference in Ukraine, prime ministers of Britain and Poland and Finland and Netherlands and all kinds of others, generals were saying Ukraine has shown its resilience, Ukraine is winning, Ukraine is now fighting in Russia, next is this, next is that. Now, what of course the reality is that in Kursk, the territory controlled by the Ukrainians is shrinking. But most important events are unfolding in Donbass, where the fortifications that had been there for many years, that the Ukrainians built from 2014, 2022, now they're being overcome. And now the front line is actually moving. And the forecast is that in the next few months, it will be all over. Now, does Zelensky know it? Yes, that's the point. I'm sure he knows it. I'm sure that Budanov and Yermak and others who are in his team are reporting him daily. But then why is he talking about victory? Well, the answer is very simple. He is talking for victory because of domestic reasons and because domestic politics and because of the public image that he has to portray to the Western sponsors. Let me first talk about his domestic politics. Strictly speaking, he is not legitimate because his term expired in May 2024. So to stay in power, he has to show some success, number one. And number two, he cannot show any sign of weakness or any sign of defeat. So, for example, in the interests of Ukraine, it would have made sense to accept Putin's conditions of June 2024, that Russia takes over 4 provinces and Ukraine is neutral, and then the war is over. That makes sense. The war is over. People will no longer be dying from bombs and lack of electricity, etc., etc. All these hardships for the Ukrainian people could end. Why is he not doing it? Because they won't let him. Who they? The opposition, the domestic right wing, the nationalists, the Banderovites, those who had staged a coup in 2014. They will not allow, even if Zelensky wanted to, any compromise with Putin. The paradox, of course, is that it's the right wing, it's the nationalist forces who are now the best friend of Putin, because Putin presumably wants victory and a total victory. Presumably he wants to go all the way to Kiev. And if the Ukrainians had agreed to just lose for territories and cut their losses, then it would be very difficult for Putin to justify the continued offensive. But now when the Ukrainians are saying, no, we're not going to negotiate, but only with a position of strength, only when we're members of NATO, there's no incentive whatsoever for the Russians to negotiate anything and move in further and further west. So that's the domestic situation for Zelensky. He cannot afford to show any weakness or any willingness to compromise. He has to keep on fighting. That's his only option. Now, this is the domestic audience. Now, the foreign audience, he comes to Washington. He cannot appear weak. This is why he keeps saying we're winning in Kursk, we're winning there, we're holding all the front. And then the victory plan. The victory plan is presented, first of all, as a show. Zelensky is a showman. He enjoys, he loves all these meetings and speeches, and he's meeting with the most powerful people in the world. He's meeting with Biden, and he's meeting with other leaders of the world at the United Nations plenary session. I mean, he truly is enjoying the show. He really just loves being at the center of world politics. Now, what does he exactly mean by the victory plan? Let me backtrack and remember that exactly a year ago, in the fall of 2023, they came to Washington, Ukrainian people, his generals and others, and they published articles in Foreign Affairs and gave speeches. And essentially, Zaluzhny at that time said, "Give me 500 tanks, and we will win." And Ukrainians were saying at that time, we will celebrate New Year's in Crimea. And this is exactly a year ago, in the fall of 2023. So Americans did give them everything. They did give them everything that they asked. And the tanks and the aircraft came late. And so what? They ran into Russian defenses lines, and then they stopped at Rabotino and couldn't move any further. And then the Russians began their counteroffensive, which is unfolding to the present day. So today, a year later, after all of this failed, Zelensky comes with the same idea. Give us more money, give us more missiles, give us more tanks, give us more of everything, equip our army. This Americans were willing to do and are still willing to do it. But then he comes in with a new idea. You fight for us, include us into NATO, or at least provide us some kind of Article 5 equal to Article 5 guarantees that you will fight for us, that NATO will fight for us. Now that's an absolutely crazy idea, and I'll explain why. But before that, let's just see that there are many people in the West who actually are supporting this idea. Boris Johnson is the one who publicly asked the United States to admit Ukraine into NATO right now. At the Yalta Strategic European Conference that held in Kiev just a couple of weeks ago, there were many, many people, former Prime Minister of Finland and Sikorsky, Foreign Minister of Poland, and many, many, many others, Westmoreland, General of the United States, they were all saying Ukraine must win. We cannot allow Putin to win. This seems to be like a standard, where at least the ruling elites in Europe up to now position. We cannot allow Russia to win. Therefore, we should arm Ukraine. We should fight Russia. And some of them went in their speeches even further and were saying that Russia is a part of the axis of evil, just exactly as in the Cold War, the evil empire. That Reagan called the Soviet Union. Axis of evil. Russia is a totalitarian state. Putin is a dictator. Therefore, all of the European countries must unite in one big fight against the totalitarianism. So, since then, a few things have changed, and now Zelensky comes with this idea, admit us into NATO. Well, the point is, of course, this is impossible. impossible. Why impossible? Because to be admitted to NATO, one has to be approved by all member states. Now, here's how it is in Europe at this time. The Northern Europeans, the Baltic countries, Poland, Sweden, Finland, Netherlands, Denmark, and Britain are all in favor. They probably would vote for including Ukraine into NATO, although that also means that they automatically are at war with Russia, and I don't know how their parliaments would react to that. But then there's a whole lot of other countries in Southern Europe who will definitely say no. They are not going to accept Ukraine into NATO. First of all, among them is Hungary, but also in view of latest pronouncements, it's Germany. Also latest pronouncements of Macron, who was ready just a few months ago to send French troops, and now he's beginning to say Russia is a part of Europe and we have to talk to them. No way will it pass through the parliament, through the Assemblée Nationale in France, especially that he now has deceived French voters and created a government that is not based on the results of elections that he himself had ordered. So the situation in Europe, least of all Italy or Greece or other countries, so no way would this pass. And therefore, this is impossible. And probably Zelensky knows this. So why is he doing it? He's doing it for the public show. He wants to appear as the person who is trying to save Ukraine. And then there is this element of blackmailing the Americans. Essentially, if his plan of victory is not accepted, he can always say later, well, you see, if they had included us into NATO, if they had done this and this and that, then we would not have lost. So it's a kind of a way out for him to put the blame on the Americans, which the Americans don't like, and it may also lead a couple of months after elections to his being replaced, if he survives that far. Now, suppose that the United States on its own, without any allies, without any NATO, said, okay, we provide security guarantee to Ukraine and we allow them to shoot our missiles and we will provide more and we will do everything to defend Ukraine, which means Zelensky regime. Is that possible? My answer, no. This is not possible. Why is it not possible? It is not possible because the Pentagon people know that Russia is not a banana republic. Russia is not even Iran that can shoot back. The Russians, President Putin has declared that if that were to happen, this would be a state of war. And the first thing that the Russians are discussing, I'm listening to their talk shows and political debates, is that the first thing they would do is shoot down American satellites that provide the guidance to all these missiles. Without these satellites, these missiles are useless because they wouldn't be able to find their target. That's the first thing. Another thing they can do is to provide hypersonic missiles to U.S. opponents, clients, just like Ukraine is. For example, this could be provided to Iran, to Iraq, to Syria, to the Houthis, and in view of possible big war in defense of Israel, as the United States puts it, or more likely in defense of Netanyahu's crazy ideas of what defense of Israel is, this is extremely dangerous because American aircraft carriers are essentially a weapon of the 20th century, and they can do absolutely nothing against Russian hypersonic missiles. In other words, they're sitting ducks waiting to be blown out to pieces if need be, and if Russia is threatened or God forbid, targeted by American missiles. And the Pentagon people know it. They know exactly what is going on. This is why they are against it. Moreover, even if word come to pass that Biden in his last day of office said, okay, Ukraine is included in NATO, the United States Congress will not vote for it. Simply not, because they just simply are not crazy enough to support such an idea that can drag the United States into war against Russia. It's dangerous enough to be dragged into war against Iran, but certainly not against Russia. So Zelensky is a dead man walking. How long is he going to keep walking? Well, I think that he could have survived now if he had concluded peace, but he doesn't want to for the reasons I explained. So what he's trying to get more money and then wait for the collapse of his regime and then set up comfortably in London a government of exile. In the meantime, grabbing more money and more support and more public attention and keep the show going. The show must go on. This is the rubric of Mr. Zelensky. How long it will be and when exactly it will collapse, we will know in a very short time, probably in 2 or 3 months. Thank you, and until next time, please subscribe and don't forget to buy my book, From Vladimir Lenin to Vladimir Putin, Russia in Search of Its Identity. The description and the link is in the description. Bye.